Good, happy Saturday evening. I'm Riley King. Welcome to this Saturday evening edition of the Riley King Newscast, right here on the Riley King Network. Let's get started right now. First up, federal government warns businesses about potential cyber attacks. Let's take a listen to that video from ABC News.
Get in the car.
I get the feeling she's been watching Black Widow on Disney+.
Totally.
With Marvel, Star Wars, Disney, and more, you'll get the feeling too. Only on Disney+.
Microchip maker in the U.S. tells ABC News it has been hit with a cyber incident. While this incident has not been attributed to anyone just yet, the federal government is warning all American companies to shore up their systems as the Russia-Ukraine conflict continues. ABC's Chief Justice correspondent Pierre Thomas has an exclusive look inside the NSA exercises to prepare for a potential cyber attack.
As the Ukrainian crisis unfolds, President Biden made clear the potential of cyber attacks from Russia is very much on his mind. But could the Russian government truly impact the lives of everyday Americans? The cold, hard truth is yes.
Welcome to Dreamport. This is one of two labs that...
In response to the growing cyber threat, the U.S. Cyber Command has developed the Dreamport facility, along with private sector partners and academia, to foster innovation in hacking defense and offense.
All of the devices that power this model city are real actual devices that you would find out in the real world.
It built this miniature city to practice real-world attacks.
This young hacker is about to take out power to an entire city.
Dreamport hackers turned off the city's lights, caused the water park to flood, disrupted traffic lights, and brought the city's port to a halt.
So the idea here is to model the behavior of disruptive cyber attacks.
The Kremlin has an army of hackers at its disposal.
Russia has been one of the most aggressive countries in employing disruptive attacks.
But the U.S. has far-reaching capabilities of its own.
We would respond very forcefully, so whether in the cyber world or the virtual world. So this is something that President Putin is going to have to think through.
U.S. officials are taking no chances. In recent weeks, Homeland Security officials have urged organizations and businesses of all sizes to update and fortify the security of their computer networks, to control access to their networks, and to have a worst-case scenario plan in place to include backup systems if hacked. Guys?
Pierre Thomas for us there in Washington.
Well, hey there, GMA.
Okay, there you go on that video and that report. How Americans across the country react to the war in Ukraine. Let's take a look at this video from ABC News.
Now to the support here at home for citizens in Ukraine trying to protect their freedom. Protests held in every major city, and a former reality star shipping $10 million worth of survival kits to Ukrainians fleeing the country. ABC's Kenneth Moulton is here with more. Good morning, Kenneth.
Lindsay, good morning. As Phil just showed us, we've seen those incredible images of Ukrainians in need. People here in the U.S. are not only demanding an end to Russia's aggression, they are donating their time and money as the humanitarian crisis deepens. Overnight, major landmarks in the U.S. and around the world illuminated in Ukraine's blue and yellow. Protests in the streets across the U.S., thousands, including Ukrainian Americans, marching.
Stand with Ukraine!
Some demonstrators sharing horrible stories of loved ones trapped in the violence.
My mom just taped all windows because if they start shooting and they decide that since they don't have the place to hide, they will stay in the bathroom and just hide in it too.
Entrepreneur, philanthropist, and former reality star Bethany Frankel using her nonprofit to send aid to families, children in need.
We have 100,000 survival kits that we have shipped. We have $10 million in aid that will reach Poland. And we have a warehouse with $16 million of aid in Miami.
Frankel says her initiative, Be Strong, partnering with Global Empowerment Mission, has seen an influx of donations since Russia's invasion. They're committing to sending things like hygiene kits, blankets, and generators to NATO countries bordering Ukraine. But they also want to get people out of the region if needed.
Helping people with their travel logistics to get them to loved ones or help them get somewhere that's safe, then it's the next layers of this, helping people rebuild.
Other humanitarian organizations, including the Red Cross and the UN, calling for the protection of critical infrastructure like hospitals from attacks as they now rush to help the people of Ukraine. Those aid organizations are still having a tough time figuring out the full damage to water and power systems from Russia's attack. We can also report that the UN is urging Ukraine's neighboring countries to keep their borders open to provide safety and protection to those fleeing. Gio.
Oh, Kenneth, so many people looking for ways to help the people of Ukraine. Kenneth, thank you for bringing us that.
Well, hey there, GMA.
Okay, there you go on that video and that report. Scott Peterson, jury testifies in court. Let's take a listen to that video from ABC News.
Hello, I'm Swati Gautam. I'm a pediatric infectious disease specialist, and I recommend the COVID vaccination. These vaccines are as safe as most over-the-counter medicines, and they give us the power to protect our children.
Paid for with Pennsylvania taxpayer dollars.
Now to Scott Peterson, convicted of killing his wife and unborn child nearly 2 decades ago, now attempting to get a new trial. And at the center of his push, questions about whether a juror lied to get on the jury that put him behind bars. ABC's Zareen Shaw is in Los Angeles with more. Good morning, Zareen.
Hi, good morning, Eva. This is a case that got worldwide attention. A father-to-be convicted of killing his wife and unborn son. And now there's a chance the entire case gets thrown out, and it all centers around one juror and whether she kept a secret from the court.
This morning, nearly 20 years after convicted killer Scott Peterson was accused of killing his wife Lacey and their unborn son, a California court now deciding whether the case should be thrown out over one juror's answers about her past. Peterson's attorney argued in court that Rochelle Nice, no longer sporting her signature dyed red hair, failed disclosing she was beaten by a boyfriend while pregnant, and during another pregnancy filed a restraining order against her boyfriend's ex-girlfriend, who she claimed was stalking her. Nice's week-long testimony started yesterday, all of it under immunity from prosecution. When Peterson's attorney asked Nice about how truthfully she answered the jury questionnaire, she said, "I didn't consider myself a victim." California Supreme Court already overturned Peterson's death sentence 2 years ago, but his lawyers sent multiple reasons they think his conviction should also be overturned, citing Nice's alleged conflict of interest in the case that riveted the nation. Lacey Peterson was 8 months pregnant with the boy the Petersons decided to name Connor when prosecutors say Peterson dumped Lacey's body from his fishing boat into the San Francisco Bay on Christmas Eve 20 years ago. Experts say even if Peterson's conviction is thrown out, it may not mean much in the long term.
It's important for everybody to remember that. If a glorious win for Scott Peterson here simply means he gets a new jury and a new trial. It doesn't mean he goes free. It doesn't mean that he's going to be released. Even if they prevail in this hearing, they're going to retry him, and I have every confidence that he'll be convicted again.
And one thing bound to come up this week, a book that Nice co-wrote with other jurors about the very trial they oversaw. Lindsay?
Wow, 20 years later. Zareen, thank you so much.
Well, hey there, GMA fans. Robin Roberts here.
Okay, and there you go on that video and that report. CDC issues new pandemic guidance. Let's take a listen to that video from ABC News.
Now on GMA with a big shift in the guidelines from the CDC on the wearing of masks. It will allow most people to go without them indoors in public places. And ABC's Elwyn Lopez is here with all of those details. Elwyn, good morning.
Hey, Gio, good morning. That big shift marking a new phase of the pandemic, allowing for most of the country to ditch those masks, and that goes for schools too.
This morning, new guidance from the CDC. The agency's metrics suggesting 70% of the U.S. can now take off those masks.
We want to give people a break from things like mask wearing when our levels are low, and then have the ability to reach for them again should things get worse in the future.
The new metrics are centered around COVID-19 hospitalizations and hospital capacity.
This new framework moves beyond just looking at cases and test positivity to evaluate factors that reflect the severity of disease.
This allows the agency to classify an area's risk level as high, medium, or low. and the communities in medium and low can now shed their masks. And over the next 10 days, 5 states, along with Washington, D.C., expected to ditch those indoor mask mandates. And in Chicago, the city is doing away with some restrictions starting Monday.
We're seeing ourselves on the downward slope of this Omicron surge.
With children under 5 still unable to get a vaccine, some parents worry over the lack of mandates at schools like this one in the Philadelphia area.
I think it's good for the kids, but at the same time, I'm just concerned about their immunity.
And in New Jersey, one of the nation's first pediatric long-haul COVID units.
We started to receive phone calls from parents saying, my kid is just not bouncing back to school.
9-year-old CJ is battling multi-system inflammatory syndrome in children, known as MIS-C, a complication of COVID.
We were scared we were going to lose him.
He is 3 weeks away from being a COVID long hauler after testing positive for antibodies in December. His parents believe he caught the virus weeks earlier and says he was asymptomatic.
I was scared to at least walk or run or something, because I didn't want to hurt myself more than I already was.
And despite that new guidance from the CDC, you will still have to mask up across all forms of public transportation for at least 3 more weeks. Eva?
Ellen Lopez for us there in Atlanta.
Well, hey there, GMA fans. Robin Roberts here. Thanks for...
Okay, and there you go on that video and that report. Poland accepts Ukraine refugees aimed invasion. Let's take a listen to that video from NBC News.
The storm starting.
Without you, our whole world crumbles into dust.
This won't come between us.
We want to head now to southeastern Ukraine, where our chief foreign correspondent Richard Engel is on the move this morning. Richard, what are you seeing there?
So we left the city of Mariupol, and we are now on some of the provincial roads to try and get a sense of what is going on, how far the Russians have advanced, how the Ukrainian troops are doing. We are trying to get to a couple of locations before the sun goes down here, which is why we're not stopping. If you can see, the roads are almost entirely empty. Very, very few people here are venturing out of their homes. We've seen many Ukrainian checkpoints, and the Ukrainian troops are taking extraordinary measures to try to barricade the roads and protect towns, villages, cities. They've been cutting down trees. They've been putting stones and earth piled up in the middle of the roads. The Ukrainian troops are also trying to distinguish themselves. They are putting distinctive colors, yellow or blue, on their helmets, on their arm, on their uniforms, in order to prevent friendly fire, but also potentially to recognize saboteurs, because there are Russian troops in this country. The Russian troops have similar uniforms. They have similar military equipment, and there are reports that some of them have been wearing actually Ukrainian military uniforms. So the soldiers themselves are trying to barricade the cities, protect the cities, and also to take precautions so that they know who is who on what is now a nationwide battlefield.
And Richard, we know you and your team are veterans of conflict, but please stay safe, my friend. Thanks for that report.
Well, tens of thousands of Ukrainians have fled their home country, crossing the border to Poland for safety. That's where we find NBC's Kelly Kobiea. Kelly, good morning to you.
Good morning to you, Kristen. Yeah, it's just been a non-stop flow of people at this border crossing, the Medyka border crossing in Poland. We're seeing women and children arriving, exhausted looks on their faces, but also looks of relief because they finally made it here. On the other side of the border, on the Ukrainian side, things have gotten worse since yesterday. A line of cars, snakes, more than 20 miles back from the border crossing. And once people are at the border, they then have to get into a line that goes more than a mile back in order to be processed. We've heard from people who've arrived that the Ukrainians are trying to process women and children first. But again, it's just taking hours. One woman told me it took more than 24 hours for her to get to this side of the border. She was traveling with her 2 young children and exposed to the elements overnight, spending the night at that border crossing in the cold, no facilities, no food, no place to use the bathroom. So a really difficult situation for the people trying to get here. But once they get here, the situation on this side has actually changed quite a bit since yesterday. If you just look off to my shoulder here, you see a number of groups set up alongside this fence. They're volunteers who've come here just to help out. They've brought supplies for people who've come here with nothing, supplies for children. And again, the numbers are growing. UNHCR says nearly 80,000 people have now crossed the border into Poland over the past 48 hours. Kristen, Peter.
Just heartbreaking to think about how many refugees there now are. Kelly Kobiea, thank you so much.
Okay, and there you go on that video and that report. January 6th rioter who carried Pelosi's podium sentenced. Let's take a listen to that video from NBC News.
We gotta tell people that Liberty Mutual customizes car insurance, so you only pay for what you need. And we gotta do it fast.
Woo! New personal record, Limu!
Only pay for what you need.
Liberty, 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 liberty.
As the January 6th investigation intensifies, we're learning another rioter will spend time behind bars. On Friday, a Florida man who was seen carrying House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's podium was given 75 days in prison. Adam Johnson must also pay a $5,000 fine. The FBI has arrested more than 740 people in connection with the U.S. attack on the Capitol.
Okay, and there you go.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel.
Okay, and there you go on that video and that report. And that does it for this evening edition of the Riley King Newscast, right here on the Riley King Network. Thank you for tuning in and watching. Good night and goodbye, everyone.